Hey everyone, welcome back to Canadian DIY. So today I'm going to be reviewing the Behr Chalk Paint Designer Collection and wax. Now chalk paint's been out for a number of years now, and there's a whole bunch of different manufacturers out there that make their own version of it. And there's a whole bunch of different price points that go along with that. Some manufacturers just make the paint. Some of them make a paint and a wax combination, like this Behr stuff here that I've been using for quite a while. Personally, I like the idea of having a paint and a wax combination that is designed and engineered by the same manufacturer to work together. The reason being is you can get some adverse effects happening if you use a top coat and a paint from two different manufacturers. You can get a top coat that applies and it actually re-wets the base coat, your paint, and it'll actually start to peel it up, or you can get discoloration happening when you apply one over top of the other. So I like this stuff here because it was an engineered system, which is what I was looking for. Also, bravo to Behr's marketing department and their design team. One of the things that caught my eye was definitely their labels. Their labels are probably the nicest paint labels I've ever seen on a can. Like I said, it was definitely one thing that ended up catching my eye was this and made me look into it further, and that's when I found out they had an engineered design system to work together. Now, is it all sunshine and rainbows? Depends on who you ask. Myself, I've had very good experience with this stuff. When you go to look for it, some manufacturers have them all pre-binned. In other words, you look and they got all the colors underneath their sort of washed out rainbow all on the shelf and they're pre-made. You just take them home and paint them on. This stuff, however, just like a regular typical latex paint, they have a light tint base and a dark tint base depending on if you're getting a lighter or a dark color. And then you have a designer collection chalk chip book. You pick your color and then they'll actually mix it up for you there. The waxes obviously make sense. They're already pre-binned. They've got a clear wax and then they've got colored waxes that will go over top of the paint. Now when it comes to the paint, my initial impressions were pretty good. The biggest thing I noticed when I popped the can open is there was basically no smell, which is really nice. Some manufacturers have a very harsh smell when you open up the can. This stuff does not. It's water-based, easy cleanup with just soap and water. It doesn't matter if it's your brush or on any of your hands or even some clothing. It comes out pretty easily. Dry time is very, very fast. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is it's 1 hour to touch, 2 hour recoat. Now I've definitely found it's more 1 hour to handle. It's more like 5 to 10 minutes to touch and it's dry. Now like I said, that can be a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing is, working with it, you can get a lot done in one day. The bad thing is, when you're painting this stuff, it is very, very thick and it's very, very opaque. It definitely has a really, really deep color to it, which looks fantastic in the can, and it looks really, really good when you're done. They definitely have a different look to them than a latex paint does, even if you get a latex paint in a matte finish, and they definitely have a different feel to them. This stuff definitely has more of a chalky, velvety feel as opposed to a plastic feel when it's finished. So it's really, really nice. But because it dries so fast, when you're brushing it on, you're definitely gonna want to get one of these chalk paint brushes. There's different sizes of them out there, different dimensions, and even some different shapes. You can use a latex paintbrush. I didn't like the finish of the latex paintbrush, and the reason being is it applies so little to it because latex paintbrushes are designed to soak up the paint into the bristles. So when you're brushing it on, the paint flows out of the out from deep inside the bristles, and you can brush for quite a while. This stuff, it is so thick that the paint doesn't suck up into the bristles. It sits on top. I think part of the reason for these big fat brushes is it gives you a lot of surface area for the paint, and then the paint itself, when you apply it, apply a good heavy coat of it and then brush it out. A lot of people out there say you can brush it all willy-nilly in whatever direction. I personally hate that school of thought. The reason being is once this stuff dries, and especially if you put on a tinted top coat or even just as the piece ages and gets dirty over time, you're gonna see the brush strokes. The paint does self-level to a point. Other than that though, it does leave some brush strokes. I personally like that look of it because when I did my final brush, I brushed all of my marks in the exact same direction before moving on and getting more paint onto the next piece. Now what that does is that simulates a grain pattern in my paint, so that way when I put a tinted color over top of it, your wax or more paint, something like that, you can actually get some pretty cool effects. If you went all willy-nilly on the piece, it's just gonna look like a mess. Apply it on and then brush it out a couple times and then stop. don't keep working this stuff. I definitely made that mistake on the kitchen table. Rework or overwork this stuff. It's so thick that it's already started to dry on you within a couple of minutes, and when you come back to it, you're gonna actually pull it back up, and that's gonna leave a big smudge in a dry spot, and that won't level out, and it ends up looking pretty bad. If you missed a spot, leave it, come back and get it on the second coat. If you don't want those brush strokes to be in there and you want it to self-level a little bit more, take the paint and pour it into a cup and then add a little bit of water to it, about 10%, no more than that. It does not take much. This stuff thins out very quickly. So take just a squirt bottle and put a little bit of water in there, a few drops under the tap, mix it up, and then brush it out, and it will self-level quite a bit more. The downside to doing that is because you're thinning it out, you will need to put more coats on in order to get full coverage. In terms of coverage, kind of a mixed bag. The light color, in this case the white, took about 4 coats to cover anything I put it over top of. Didn't matter if I was going over top of dark paint or even just clear coated very light natural wood. It took 4 coats for full coverage. Now, you definitely can apply a primer, and that would very heavily alleviate the amount of coats you'd have to put on. Myself, looking back, I know hindsight's 2020, I should have used a primer. But, oh well, I wanted to see how well it covered, and I got my answer. In terms of the dark, however, the dark colored very good. It only took 2 to 3 coats depending on what I was putting it over top of, and it gave me a very uniform finish when I was finished. There was no light spots or blotches or anything like that. Now, one thing chalk paint's been really good for and used a lot in lately is creating antique and distressed and vintage looks. Now, I personally like the look of creating something that's antique and vintage, but brand new. So I want to basically make a piece that's 70 years old. If 70 years ago was today, I want it to look brand new but have that old school charm and flair to it. Their color palette is very sort of pastel-y and muted, very similar to what they had paint 100 years ago or more. Their colors are true to form and they're very, very nice. Like I said, I personally like the fact that it leaves brush strokes. Just make sure you don't create a mess with it. The wax can be a mixed bag. Now myself, I personally like the idea of a wax. It's basically just a furniture wax. One thing to keep in mind is it's not a permanent coating. You will need to apply this stuff again over time. As you clean the piece, you will be wiping off some of the wax. So just keep in mind this will need reapplication from time to time. Just keep an eye on it. Now you can get colored waxes as well, and the colored waxes will go over top and give you that antique distressed look that a lot of people like as well. Myself, I don't like that look a whole lot. It tends to make the piece just look, well, old and crappy in my opinion. No offense to those that like it though. In some pieces, the finish looks beautiful, but I wouldn't want every piece in my house looking like that, let's be honest, because then it just makes your house look dingy and dilapidated. The colored waxes though, there's a lot of argument about people using these and getting just horrible finishes and they're freaking out about it, but you got to think, this is literally just a wax carrier and it's got a tint in it. In other words, that tint, if you apply it straight to your color, like a white especially, it's going to adversely change the color of that. Now, if that's something you're going for, perfect. If all you want is the colored wax to sit in the low spots and create a highlight, that's gonna be the wrong way to do it. You wanna apply the clear wax first, let it fully cure. It takes 2 hours to fully cure. Then wipe that off. Then go back and apply your clear, or your tinted wax, sorry, over top of that, and that will actually, when you remove that, stay in the low spots and give you that highlight color that you're looking for while still retaining your white or your base color first. Application of the wax was really easy. It's literally just buff on, buff off. I used a shop towel. You can use a microfiber applicator or a microfiber towel, but it's literally just wipe it on, let it sit and cure, and then just sort of wipe it off smoothly again after a couple hours to remove it, and then you're good for another long time. But like I said, as you clean the piece, you will be removing some of that wax. So keep in mind, if you put tinted wax over it, you will be removing a little bit of tinted wax every time, and even that may need reapplication. For myself, I didn't want to have to fight with that, and I also didn't want to put a clear coat on. I just wanted the idea of the wax. The wax gives me a very authentic look, but the clear coat would be a more permanent coating. The reason I didn't like the clear coat idea in this case is it would change the feel of the piece. Let's be honest. I love the way this stuff feels to begin with. It has a really nice feel to it, but there is also some things that can happen with the clear coat. If you apply the clear coat too thin, it can kind of get blotchy. If you apply it too thick, the same thing can happen. and the piece can actually yellow. The clear coat will actually pool in the low spots and turn yellow, and we don't want that to happen. Because if that happens, you got to strip it all back, and that is a bear to fix, especially with the amount of time you got invested in this piece. So the clear wax for me, it's really simple, it's fairly inexpensive, and it just applies beautifully. The nice thing too with the clear wax, it really deepens and richens up the color that you put it over top of. So this gray, after I did the whitewash to it, when I applied the wax, the color just got a whole lot deeper and richer and nicer tone to it. So the white popped more and the gray popped more, but it made them stand out from each other, and it just turned out fantastic. So I personally like the idea of the wax, but if you guys want to use the clear coat, absolutely be my guest. But make sure, if you're mixing brands, like I said, to mix and match on a scrap piece first before you attack your real piece that you're going to be applying it over. So I think that's everything, you guys. If you guys have any more questions on this stuff, let me know down in the comments below. I got more reviews on the channel already, and I got more coming. They might be up in the things, so check that out as well. Make sure to thumbs up and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. That means everything to me. So if you guys like this, like I said, do all the things. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for stopping by.